Nice, lovely, working as usual. Okay, welcome once everyone. Today is the May edition. We're having two special guests, Grave and Pablo Mangudo from the MuleSoft Engineering Team. So first of all, thank you speakers for coming to the community and doing these sessions that are extremely valuable. And thank you all for attending these communities. Again, this meetup, online English group meetup, is always good to have you. And for the next 5 minutes, we're going to do our usual introductions, announcements, and updates. And then we will leave you with Pablo and Eduardo so that you can have a full session. And I will be checking the chat to make sure we capture all your questions. Now, before we begin, just a quick recap. These are your organizers. You can see there Manik and Sandeep in AMER, Royston in APAC, myself in EMEA. With that, we move on to the house rules. Always keep in mind, when you're thinking about MuleSoft trainings, use trainings.mulesoft.com. When you need queries about trainings, about vouchers, about certifications, go to help.learn.mulesoft.com. You will get the vouchers there. You will get the if there's anything pending, and any questions that you have may be solved there. For any other doubts that you have the MuleSoft forum with the support articles as well, or the Stack Overflow, which is preferred by many, especially for data with and runtime questions. Specific guidelines for today, we have you can pop your questions in the chat and anyone in the community can try to answer. All the remaining questions will be asked in your behalf at the end of the session. And keep in mind, the recordings, I already saw the questions there, people asking. Yes, the recordings are going to be available both in the Meetups page and in the VirtualMuleys YouTube channel. And lastly, your feedback is what drives the content of these meetups. So make sure you fill that survey at the end of the meetup that you will receive the next day or the next hour after the meetup. We have 3 minutes more, so before we start, a very important update in areas of support. We are aware that around 40% of our audience today and viewers will be currently streaming, broadcasting from India. And due to the circumstances that we have seen in India, I wanted to add these 2 slides about how we all can help. This is news coming from the Salesforce main webpage, the May 3rd, 2021. Last week, we shared our latest efforts to support both colleagues and communities in India, which included more than $1 million in donations to local partners. Building on this regional support, we're also filling a plane with medical supplies, including oxygen concentrators and pulse oximeters, which will arrive in India in the incoming days. There were 4 main areas that the sport has needed help. So the medical equipment and supplies, the community isolation centers, the vaccine awareness and distribution, and the food security. I'm going to share this article with you in case that you're curious about how you can help. And in the next slide, just so you're aware, those are 4 of the main charities that Salesforce has suggested. One of them is a Salesforce initiative. The rest of them, you will know them from other sources as well. I will, again, share the article, and if you're interested in the charity support, you can donate as well, or just keep in mind that the situation in India is not easy at all. It's a big challenge, and we're aware of that, and it's been going all around the globe. With that said, and in a less serious tone, we can go to the quick recap of our online English group recordings. This is a lightning session. You can see there Sustainable Engineering Practices that was last week with Therese, and also the Building API Communities for Developers with Dan Henry. There will be other meetups that already happened, panel meetup, toughest integration challenges. If you haven't seen it, it's a great session. I really suggest you watch it, especially if you're starting your journey with Mule. Lastly, the deployment considerations and operationalizing your C4E, this one by Anu and Arno Bruman. Now, moving on to the announcements and updates, you already know what is going to happen on May. On May, it's time for MuleSoft Connect. Imagine, integrate, innovate. So you have the 3 areas there, and you can already register. I will be sharing the link as well in the chat. You will have all these links right now in the chat. Lastly, the last advertisement that I have for today, the career journeys and MuleSoft use cases. If you're interested in learning more, there will be a session next week moderated by Sandeep and Sabrina, and we will have speakers that have plenty of experience in the MuleSoft field. One of them is Francis Edwards. You may know him because he has done a lot for the community, and he has been in these meetups as well. And you can see there familiar faces as Felipe, Joshua, Edgar, Deepak, and Sonali as well. This is happening next week, so make sure you register. There's a last one on the Friends of Max videos, the initiative of 5 to 10 minutes videos that go into a technical topic and train you very quickly in something you need to do. In this case, is OIDC capabilities to support the full lifecycle client management in the Anypoint platform by my colleague, Mike Moore, back in America. Make sure you check this one out. It's 10 minutes and you will learn if you're interested in. With that said, I already took 6 minutes, so this 6 minutes of the time of Eduardo and Pablo. Just a quick intro before we start. This is the South America. You can see there my country on the top, Venezuela, and on the bottom right, you can see Argentina. If we zoom in, you can see the origins of both of our speakers today, Olavarria and Tandil, are the cities that are marked there. They will probably tell which one they are from. So today, MuleSoft Engineering Deep Dive with testing MuleApps with MUnit. A quick recap of both of our speakers. First one's on Pablo. So he's been a system engineer for more than 13 years based in Buenos Aires with a lot of experience under his belt in many different roles related to IT, working as a developer, project leader, CTO, and he also managed to work both, has giving classes at university and also has a full-time senior software engineer. In the other side, we have Eduardo Grave, which is focused on his career in software engineering for the last 5+ years, working as a consultant, as a software developer, as a Java engineer, and becoming a key senior software engineer for our team. Eduardo, Pablo, welcome. Thank you for your time. And with that, I'm open up the mic for you. Was that a fair introduction?
Yes, it was perfect. I love the map.
Excellent. 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 I knew you would like it. I have stopped sharing the screen in case that, Pablo, you will be able to start sharing the screen now as well.
Let me share the screen. Let's see.
In the meanwhile, no, we still, yeah, now we can see it. Excellent. I will stay in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Angel and Pablo. Hi to everyone. Welcome to this MuleSoft meetup. I hope that you are all doing well during this strange time we are living in. We've heard that some members of the community wanted to know more about MUnit, so here we are bringing you an agile and dynamic presentation of this great tool. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Eduardo Grave. I am 32 years old, and I am from Olavarria. Well, it's a city 4 hours drive away from Buenos Aires. You saw that in the map. It's a quiet and small inland city. About me, I am a software engineer, as Angel said. What else? Well, I don't have the talent to be a professional musician, but that is okay because I love software too. It was the second choice in my list. So I am very happy with my show, and working here at MuleSoft is great because we face new technical challenge every day, and we get to work with the best team. They are great not only technically, but also as human beings. My history here is almost the same as Pablo. We started working in Anypoint Studio about 2.5 years ago, and we moved to MUnit a few months ago. I think that's enough of me. Pablo, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right. Thank you, Edu. Hi, everyone. My name is Pablo Mangudo. I'm a software developer too. I'm a little older than Edu, but as he said before, my history here at MuleSoft is almost the same. I started working in Anypoint Studio, and now we are working together in MUnit. That's why we're here. First, let me say that it's a pleasure to be here developing software for developers. It is always a technical challenge, but we are a part of a great team that helps us to have our work done. And so I feel very well working here. About me, I have a son, Simon. He is 6 years old. He's great. Fortunately, today he's with his mother, and I can do this presentation alone. We live in Tandil, as you see in the map. This is a small city in Argentina, surrounded by hills in the middle of Buenos Aires province. It is near Alberici city, where Eduardo lives. And besides having good tennis player, it is a nice place to live. So I recommend you to visit it if you happen to be here. I hope you'll enjoy, and any feedback, please, or comment is welcome. We will have a Q block, as Angie say, to respond your questions. So take notes, and we will review them at the end. So Edu,
Okay.
if you want to start.
Sure. Let's begin with the agenda that we have for today. Well, we will start talking about testing and the importance of testing. Just a quick reminder of that. Then we will split the presentation in two parts. The first one is about MUnit. We will talk about what is MUnit, the MUnit components, a walkthrough of the tool. Then we talk about MUnit operations and tools. And we will finish this first part talking about the chat. On the second half, we will talk about the test recorder. What is test recorder, how it works, and we have a demo too. By the end of the meeting, we will have two sections. The first one is for tell you some tips and tricks that we bring here today. And the second space is for questions and answers, in which we hope that we can answer the questions that you will have for us. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. The importance of testing. Well, I am sure that most of you are aware of the importance of testing, but it is good to keep it in mind. Testing is really important because it gives you the ability to identify problems early. So if you identify the problem, you can fix them before going to production. So it makes your worthy. But it also saves time and money, because the sooner a problem is detected, the easier it is to fix it. And the overall outcome is a quality product in less time, with less bug, giving you dev hours to use in improving your product and bringing new features. So let's move to the next slide, please. We have a theoretical slide here. This is taken by the book Succeeding with Agile by Mike Kong. We see a pyramid of tests, but the important thing I want to mention is that the unit tests are at the bottom of the pyramid because they are faster than the rest of the tests. So you should have just a few integration tests, and you should make a lot of unit tests to test the different parts of your code. So let's move to the main topics. Well, MUnit, as I said before, is a project that we are working on. We think that it's a tool that deserves to be known and used. Let me say that this presentation is oriented to every user, not for experts. So we are sure that some of you will know some of the things that we are going to present today, but we hope that at the end of the meeting, you will leave knowing something new, or at least being curious about other aspects of these topics. Okay, let's finally dive in. What is MUnit? MUnit is a testing framework for Mule applications. By using it, you can test your MuleApps and APIs. You can create small unit tests, or you can create more complex ones that implies a whole use case, for example. A key aspect of MUnit is that it runs through Maven, so you can add the test easily in your CI/CD pipeline. That is a great feature. We have also coverage reports, so you can tell what is already being tested and what are you missing. And it lives in Anypoint Studio. I am sure that most of you are familiar with Anypoint Studio. It's the integrated development environment for Mule applications. So there you have a really intuitive UI to create, run, and debug the test. You can also see a well-formatted outcome to check the coverage and the successes and the failures of the test. Okay, let's go to the components. I want to explain first the test itself. When you drag and drop a test into the Studio Canvas, you will see these three scopes: behavior, execution, and validation. So the first one is behavior. You should put there processors that you want to be executed before the execution scope, or that you want to be called during the execution. We will see that later, don't worry. So then we have the execution scope. There you should put the reference to the flows being tested. You can have just a flow ref or a more complex logic with other processors. But the important thing I want to is that the test waits for every processor in the execution scope to finish before moving to the next and last scope, that is validation. And there should go assertions and verifications of the outcome of the test executed. So how to fulfill this test. Let's start with assertion. Well, I think this is a key aspect of the testing. I mean, validate the outcome of the test. And we have many ways to do this in MUnit. We are going to present here 3 processors, and we are going to present them from more specific to more general. So the first one is assert equals. Using it, you can compare that two values. Sorry, you can compare 2 values. You check that they are equals. You set the actual value, that should be something coming from the test, maybe a payload or an attribute or a variable, and you compare that against the expected value, that should be something dynamic too, but you can also set a constant or an empty value or whatever you want. The last field is message, and there you should put the message that will be displayed when the test fails. But this is a very easy but restricted processor. So let's move to the next one. The next one is assert that. With assert that, you set an expression to be validated that is something similar to the actual field of the assert equals. I mean, something coming from the test execution. And you can evaluate that using the MUnit. But what is that? Well, MUnit matchers is a set of data web functions that allows you to create assertions, validations. We have matchers for null values, for check the media type or the encoding. matchers for the strings, for comparables, for maps, for iterations. There are also matchers to combine the matchers, so we can do a lot of things here. But we are still restricted to this. Expression is something, structure, and to the MUnit matchers. So let's see another component, the last one. And the last one is assert expression. There you just put an expression, and this expression is a data wave script. So you can use there, a data wave matcher, or you can create your own matcher, or, here you can do almost everything, whatever you want. There is also another processor called run custom, that is not shown here, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's similar to this assert expression, but it gives you the ability to create a custom matcher in Java. So you have many possibilities here, but what I wanted to say is that you should keep it simple and reuse. Don't create a script or custom matcher if you don't need them. Here, the three processors are asserting the same. The three processors are checking that payload is equal to response payload 2. So in this case, I'd use the first one because it's the easier. You just drag and drop the component into the canvas and set the two values, and that's it. You don't have to worry about the matchers, or you don't have to create and maintain a data wave script. So I think that is the idea, and that's it with asserting. Let's move to the next component, that is mocking. Yes, okay. Here we have just one component to show, but it is very complete. The idea is to pick a processor in the original flow, the tested, and you replace that processor with a desired behavior for the test. So how does it work? Well, first you have to pick the processor. So you define a type of processor and a set of conditions that this processor should accomplish to be mocked. Then you have two choices. You can define a then return or a then call. Then return, the mocking will return always the same static response. For example, a payload. So there, as we see. If you choose then call, you can call a flow created specifically for the test. So instead of calling the original processor, you call this flow, and you can get a different answer in each, depending on the input that is received. I think that's it with mocking. Let's move to these final components before letting Pablo speak. That is the spy. With the spy, you can see the events after and before a processor is called. So you should choose a processor the same way that is done in the mock when. So you pick a type of processor and a set of conditions. And then you have two lanes, before call and after call. Put assertions, verifications, and logger. Because you shouldn't and you cannot change the event using the spy. So in the lanes before and after, you should put verifications. I wanted to say about the selection of the processor that is redundant. Here with the spy and with the mock when, because if you want just to match a single processor, you should use the ID, like in the example. Because having too many attributes here makes your test harder to read and to maintain. So it may sound obvious, but keep it as simple as possible. Well, now Pablo will show you how this works in an example. Pablo, all yours.
Thanks, Edu. We selected this example to show you how to do a test. This example is quite simple, but it's enough to show you how to use some MUnit component. If you want, it can be found on the link at the right. In this app, the main flow receives a request. We extract information from it and set the payload. You can see it at the bottom. Then the secondary flow evaluates if the payload meets a condition or not. If payload is equal to payload 1, we will call first subflow, or if not, we will call the second subflow. Then the two subflows set a variable value, which finally defines the response in the main flow. Just that. So with this example in mind, let's create an MUnit test. Simply right-click on the main flow and select Create a blank test for this flow. The MUnit test component is created and our main flow is referenced in the execution section. To trigger this test, we added a set event that has the attribute we need inside a query param. So this will be the request we need to trigger this test. To be successful, the value should be payload 1. We have a flow reference in the execution section and the event that will trigger this execution in behavior. Now we need to complete the validation scope. And we will use one of the components that Edu mentioned before. We need to validate that the response expected for this execution is the one we want. So by using an assert equal, we can validate that the response expected for this execution has the value payload response 1. And that's it. After that, we have a simple test. Now, to test we can spy a behavior of any component in the flow. Here we add a spy and pick to spy the set payload. As Edu said before, with this we can make any validation before and after the component is called. For this case, before call, by adding an assert, we can assert that the attribute in the request is payload 1. Who did this video was too slow writing, I'm sure. In the other assert, in after call, we can do the same, and we will check that the payload has changed to the value payload 1. There you can see. So this is important because this spy, we will test the behavior inside the flow, not only the final response we asserted before in the validation scope. Next, as an exercise, we can mock a component. In this case, we chose to mock the set response payload. If that component is reached, we will return an error because for the input we won't expect that. Let's see. Right. Well, what else? Yes, in this example, we also verify call. See that flow is called. I know that, but I want to show you a different way to keep. You probably need search in different parts of your app. The fact that the first assertion works and we have the response we want doesn't mean my app does all the work fine in the way we want. Having said that, we have a complete and running test. So this slide shows the component we used before. And by the way, how they look like in dark mode theme. So thanks to the team for this feature. We have used set event and verify call. Set event at the left is to define a mule event. We usually use at the beginning of the test to define the first message to send to intent. Verify right, allow to verify whether a was, and finally fail component. We don't use it to validate should fail if is reached. We also have other useful operations to develop our test before and after scopes. Before suite is useful when you need to set up a test environment before the whole suite runs. And finally, we can add an after suite operation to execute actions later. Probably you need to tear down the same test environment after the whole test runs. So this is what we have to use. In a different way, we have before test and after test. Before test will execute actions before each test runs, such as creating a file or setting a variable that we will consume in each test. Finally, after suite, we'll do the same, letting you execute action after each test runs. So far, we have seen how to use a MUnit to test a simple flow, but not a real one. So as you can see, testing becomes a very time-consuming task in the way flows grow up. And of course, when the input and output get more and more complex. So indeed, this is what our customer said. The feedback was that a MUnit is hard to digest, difficult to read and share, and that is affecting the speed of the development. And worse, sometimes they say that it has become an afterthought, not a forethought, which means we are testing after problems arise. And we don't want this, you know that. So to avoid these problems, MUnit gives us an amazing tool. Yes, we are talking about test recorder. Test recorder will save you time. By writing those tests, you need to validate your app. It records your flow execution and lets you define a test based on the captured event. And it's there, integrated in Studio, only 2 clicks away. But how does it work? The user selects to record the flow. The recorder deploys the flow in Studio and waits for a live event that triggers the flow processing. If needed, the user will trigger the flow execution, and the recorder will collect all the execution data and then shows a wizard to create a test quite easily. The user only has to select a component to mock, spy, and assert, and configure them by using the given options. Finally, the test recorder creates the MUnit test. It is quite simple, so let's have a look in our sample. Let me play the video. As we said before, with only 2 clicks, select the second option to start a test recording. The Flow app will deploy it locally. There you can see the logs. And after Mule application starts, a modal dialog will appear indicating that a MUnit will be listening for an event that triggered the flow execution. When the event is registered, a MUnit starts recording, collecting the input event path through the entire execution of the flow. Finally, when the response has been sent, the user can proceed with the configuration. First, the user chose a suite, the file, and add the test, and of course the name. And after that, the UI shows you all the components that were reached during the execution of the flow for that event request. Again, we can mock, spy, or validate any of them by just selecting the right options. Here, like we did before, we choose to spy the set payload component, asserting before and after values are what we expect, and that was payload 1. To get a similar test, then we can validate that the secondary flow is called only once, and that's all. Next, we can review the summary configuration to check that everything is okay, and click Finish to get our test done, ready to run. We did it much faster, right? This is probably because we didn't need to run, so we get the same result with less effort, just by clicking. But do if we want to do our test coverage, for example, we need to route the text execution to reach other component, which means changes in the input and output values. With Test Recorder, your test file is organized differently, and every MUnit component is configured importing a DataWeb language file. So you can modify them there, which is easier than modifying a big test file. Test Recorder feature not only improves the testing experience by generating an entire test case, it also does it by making our test easy to read, modify, and share. So please use it. Now, give you Edu. He will comment on some good practices that will help you to take advantage of this feature. So,
thank you, Pablo. Yes. Well, to finish the presentation, and before having a little space to answer your questions, we have some tips to share about how to create your test with MUnit. We will start with 3 tips that can sound obvious, but don't paying attention to them could be really expensive. The first one is use good conventions to naming the test. The name auto-generated by the Studio UI or the recorder is okay if you have just one test per flow. Usual case, you will often want to have more than one test for each flow. So you should take a time before naming the test in order to have a more maintainable suite, I mean. Then use clear messages in assertion. It's similar. You can fix and identify a problem much faster if you have a clear log. So take a minute to make the message in assertions too. And the third one is leverage the mocking. Remember the first slides. Unit test should be fast, so use the mocking in order to don't run always the whole process. This is a great tool, I think. But let's move to more specific tricks. The first one is keep your data with script in other files. That is what Test Recorder does. It's easy to maintain your project if you have the scripts in different files that the structure of the test. So this is a good practice. Also, use debugger. The Studio Debugger is a great tool. So even when your tests are failing in your CI/CD pipeline, go to and debug it to find the problems. Now, this next trick is more complex, but I know that it's useful for some people, so I think that is worth showing. If you use the recorder to record an execution of the flow that raises an error, it will fail. That is a known limitation of the recorder. But in this case, you can record a happy path for that flow and then modify the input, the assertion, whatever you want. But the idea is the recorder will create the whole structure of the test, and then you make these little modifications. The next one is make sure that you are not expecting data that can change between execution. Well, the idea here is that usually you have a flow that calls a service that can return a payload, for example, a timestamp in the payload. Create an assertion for that in the wizard of the test recorder. The test will fail because this timestamp changes in every execution. So be careful with random data and time-dependent information. And the last trick we have for today, or tip, is use parameterization to avoid writing many tests. This is a nice practice too. You should have and many parameters, so you can cover many paths of your project. If you want to, you can check that Diane Kessler meetup that has a really good example of this. Well, I think that's it. Now we can answer your questions. I don't know, Angel, if you are coming back now.
Yes, I'm here, Eduardo. Thank you guys for Eduardo and Pablo for putting the time as well. And we do have many questions, but half of them has been already answered by the community. We have Tony, we have Francis, we have Sanja, we have Manik, everyone is here. From the ones that are pending, the first one is only the payload. This one is coming from Pretty. Only the payload can be validated, or also attributes and variables can be validated as well?
Well, I think that is about the assertions. Whatever you want, yes, attributes and variables too, sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Another one from Tariq. Will mocking do connection tests on mocked connectors as well?
Could you repeat that? I didn't understand. I don't know, Pablo, if you get that.
Sure.
No,
Will the mocking component do connection tests on mocked connectors? Once you have a mocked connector, are you able to do well, this is a good point. I'm not sure if this is referring to the test recorder or the previous section. Tariq, if you can clarify that question, and we will move to the next one from Seinu. There is a validator component from Anypoint Studio Palette. what makes it different from using MUnit validation, where Tony already replied, use the validator component for Mule runtime, for runtime scenarios to check for problems and invoke appropriate errors. Validation appears just to be a scope. This, I think, is already clear. I don't know, Eduardo, Pablo, you want to add anything else?
No, I think that's
okay.
I don't know, Pablo.
We have another one from Eduardo that is asking, why does the spy component go into behavior scope? Sounds like it will go into an assert. Why does the spy go in behavior scope? Sounds like it will go in assert.
Okay, I can take that. Well, as we saw in the test structure, the validation execution is executed before the execution scope. Sorry, the validation scope is executed after the execution scope. That makes sense. So everything finished in the execution scope before moving to the validation scope. So the spy should be in other place, and we put that in because the before scope can interact with the execution scope.
Thank you for that, Eduardo. The next one is from Sunikumar. If HTTP requester is wrapped using until successful, will the mock on requester work? How to ensure that the HTTP requester is mocked?
Well, I think that should work. I mean, an HTTP requester inside the until successful scope. Maybe there is an issue that I am not aware of, but we should see the project. But you can work around these things sometimes, putting the processor in a different flow, for example, and creating a flow ref. So you will be mocking the flow ref, maybe. So I don't know if you understand the idea. It's like change a little bit the application to work around this problem. But this should work.
Okay, thank you for also the tip, Eduardo. In case that it doesn't work, of course, you can try that workaround, and you should always open the support case with all the reference data in case there is a bug, because it's not the expected behavior. Okay, with that we move to the next one. This one is more about best practices. It's from Atul Verma. Is it possible to do TDD in MuleSoft development?
It's a very general question.
Yes.
I think that is test-driven development.
Yes, test-driven development. Test-driven.
Yes, I think, I don't know how you do this in other places, I mean, with other languages, but yes, you can create before the test, you can use the mocking, so you can create the tests before having the whole project working. I mean.
Yeah, just to add to that one, of course, you're able to do TDD with MUnit, and you can also think about for unit tests, integration tests. Sometimes in some customers, I have seen that you combine using Postman and the Newman CLI to do some integration tests, but the way to go by default is MUnit for Mule applications. Thank you for that, Eduardo. With that, we're going. Atul, if you're interested on anything specific from TDD in MuleSoft, let us know in the comments, and we can talk about that one in details. The next one is from Tony DeFusco. The test recorder will also capture the send credentials. It's just a note that he was adding. For example, when you're doing basic authentication, it's important for the community to keep that in mind. Nothing to add there. I don't know, Eduardo, Pablo, if you have anything else there.
No, no.
Okay. The
That's okay.
next one is, it's okay. Okay. We do have around 3 minutes more of questions. We don't want to saturate you guys, but the community is very excited to have engineering here. So the next one is from Kanak. Recorded test for API kits is giving an error. Linked hash map cannot be cast to HTTP request attributes. I'm afraid that that should get a proper investigation. I don't think we should address it in here. I don't know, Eduardo or Pablo, if you have any ideas on top of your mind.
No, we should see the project. I don't know, Pablo.
We have to see the project to see what can be done to correct it. Surely
Yeah.
there's a problem with the script.
Yeah, with the type of the data as well, of the payload and so forth. Yeah, understood. Okay, the next one is from Sridharahan. The question is, sometimes we're facing issues in MUnit when we run with higher runtime version. Say, for example, if I develop the app in an MUnit 4.2, after that, if I increase the runtime version to 4.3, sometimes the MUnits are not starting. Do we need to follow any guidance when running in higher runtime manager versions?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it should work. If I am getting it right, he's moving, or she, sorry, I don't know, uh, a newer version of runtime. That should work. Maybe there are changes in runtime. There is an issue or a bug there that we can check later, but that should work.
And there's also the release MUnit notes where you should be able to see the different new runtime versions that are supported for the different MUnit versions. For example, you can find one here when you see that 2.3 to 0.4. It's compatible with 4.3.0 or later. So that's important for you as well to get the MUnit release notes when you're managing between the versions. Okay, there's another one from Miguel Chaveza. Everyone seems to ask, this is around best practices, everyone seems to ask 80% or greater unit test coverage. What do you think about it? Do you agree that this is, again, general good rule for all unit tests?
Well, yes, I think so. Like we said before, you should have many unit tests. This is the faster to cover your code. So I think yes, that's a good practice.
Yeah. There's also a point there that if think about your core business APIs, the ones that are more important, that sometimes you can define even more than 80%, right? But there would be other scenarios where some developers I have seen they do exceptions, or they do omit for the MUnit test coverage some of the, whether it's exception handler or some other flow. It's very important for the organization to come to an agreement on what is the quality of test as well, and then to come into what's the test coverage. And as Eduardo already mentioned, the 80% is a standard set that is suggested. Okay, team, there seems to be a couple more coming in. I think we're conscious of time. Pablo, Eduardo, do you have 6 minutes more? And then we can close with the questions for today. Pablo, Eduardo, sorry to ask, because time-wise, do you have 6 minutes more for the question and answer?
So,
I couldn't hear you, Angel. Sorry, I lost you.
Oh, it's all right. So I'm having issues with the connection as well. Great. I'm sorry about that.
Just a little bit. Now you're back.
Okay, the question is if you still have 5 minutes more for the questions.
Yes, sure.
Okay, we will continue a little bit more. This one comes from Ramesh Tombre. Does MUnit test recorder work with batch processing?
Batch processing. I don't get the...
Yes, when you're using the component in the MuleSoft palette of batch, are you able to use the MUnit test recorder?
Yes, I think there is no limitation for that. You should review the documentation of the test recorder that has all the limitations of the recorder there, check, specified. But I think that should work.
Yeah, we're getting similar questions that are around if any point MQ subscriber, can we have MUnit test for the flows which has any point MQ subscriber as a source? I will add the limitation page. I already added in the chat. I will add it again just so that everyone can validate between that and the versioning. Eduardo, Pablo, just to verify on that one, is can we have MUnit test for the flows which have any point MQ subscriber has a source, or is this better to check it on the documentation?
Yes, I think that you can.
Okay, there's another one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Okay, let's go to the next.
Okay, this one comes from Victor Corso. Is it possible to see the anypoint report? In the anypoint report, the coverage include the excluded flows and files as well?
No, I don't get it. There you see the flows that you covered.
It checks the component are reached. So
the question in this case is if there's any way to know which ones are being excluded in the report.
It's a good question. I haven't seen that. No, I think that we can. I don't know, Pablo, if you remember.
No, I don't remember that.
This, but yes, no, you in the report you see the things that are being covered.
Yeah, there should be a workaround way that is where you're defining in your POM XML what is being ignored, but I'm not sure how you would be able to actually put it into the report. At least you will have it from the, if I'm correct, from the POM file, which ones you were excluding.
Maybe, yes.
Okay, team, we have 2 minutes more and there's more and more questions coming. This one is from just one. There is a limitations with error handle and error continue have to proceed with MUnit test recorder. Okay, that's part of the limitations. We already saw it. The next one is
that should work. Sorry, Angel. That should work. The only limitation with the errors is that with the flow prices the error. There is not there, so yes, the recorder will fail when the app being recorded fails.
Oh, thank you for that, Eduardo. Sorry that I was missing the question. Actually, I thought it was already answered. Good point. Okay, we have another one coming from Benil Phillips, and it's about if the test recorder works for scheduler applications.
Yes.
Does the...
sorry, the question.
No, that's the question. Does the test recorder works for scheduler application?
Yes, we show here the example with an HTTP request, but yes, you can do the same with the scheduler. In this case, the recorder doesn't wait for the input of the user. It's just start recording when you click the button.
Got it. Thank you for that, Eduardo. We have some question more coming. That's about it. We don't have any more questions. People are already thanking for the session. Please, if you have liked the session, let your comments in the chat, because we usually socialize this content internally so that people understand the value of the methods for the community. And as always, we really appreciate when engineering is actually jumping into our meetups and very eager to join directly with the community. And you have seen that it's not only Eduardo and Pablo, we have also different people in the audience as Sanja. So think about product managers that are also in this meetup right now today, taking care of your feedback and hearing the community. Okay, everyone. With that, Pablo, Eduardo, I don't know if you have any closing words, any last thing that you would like to mention around maybe where people can find more on MUnit or any other.
No, I want to just thank you to everyone. You are also kind, so it's very comfortable to be here talking. So thank you very much.
Yes, of course. And any other question, surely we can respond by the customer support, so we finally can get those projects to analyze in deep, right?
Yeah, for these ones, we usually rely on whether it's posted into the community as well, because we understand that you will be working on creating new features, and if something is a bug, we need to validate it for the triage of support. So first the forum, then the support if it's actually a bug, and then support team usually diagnose and submits, following what Pablo mentioned. And Pablo, Eduardo, so we're getting great feedback there. I expect you I will share it with you as well, paste it in our Slack so you have the information there, all the shout outs. Thank you everyone for joining, and there is no questions. The last thing that Tony De Fusco asked, if there's any reason of the resemblance between Eduardo and Kit Harington from Game of Thrones. That was was it on purpose, Eduardo?
Yes, no.
Oh, no. There you go.
Thank you for that. It's very kind to.
Jon Snow in the middle. There you. Sorry, Eduardo. I needed to highlight that one. Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today, and please register for the next meetup. And thank you again, Eduardo and Pablo and Sanja as well for putting the time into this session. Cheers, everyone. Consuelo is there as well. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.